Welcome to Getting Context. Let's dive right in. So this is an opinion piece written by Arnon Grunberg. He's a Dutch writer. He's a novelist. I've never been able to finish one of his novels, but I've read some of his non-fiction books. I think currently he lives in New York. Um, he writes in English as well, I've been told. This is an opinion piece where he writes, Hamas has already won this war. And he wrote this one week after the tragic events of the 7th of October. And I'm not going to translate it word for word this time. So he says that this conflict always elicits very emotional reactions. That the way people comment on these events on social media don't really bring out the best in people. And that there's Islamophobia and at the same time also anti-Semitism. He doesn't want to play a part in this moral theater. He's not going to hold some kind of competition in killed babies to prove who's the biggest asshole. So Joe Biden called this attack by Hamas the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust. He's right. You could compare the best comparison to make here is that of a gigantic pogrom. So and apparently this attack to him makes clear that in the eyes of Hamas, every Israeli citizen, including a baby, is a soldier, and the goal is to make Israel disappear. How exactly they imagine that is a big mystery to him because Israel has atomic weapons. Maybe if these Israelis return to Europe, they will take their atomic weapons in their backpack. It's a nice subject for speculative fiction. And there will be lots of books and lots of reports about how the Israeli secret services failed. No, things we already know, of course, that apparently Israeli soldiers had been warned, but they didn't receive the message or they didn't read it. He writes that the kibbutz Kfar Aza had to wait 20 hours to be liberated. And this is just like the war of 2006 with Hezbollah, when the Israeli ground forces also didn't meet expectations. So, and then he writes a conflict about real estate. He tends to be sarcastic. So it's also the failure of Benjamin Netanyahu, and that the reason that everything failed so spectacularly on the Israeli side is their arrogance and hubris. So the conviction that you're the best is just as dangerous as it is appealing. He also writes that Netanyahu had surrounded himself with a lot of incompetent ministers. And he writes that they've made sure that the elite of the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah has a very cozy life. So they did that on purpose, he implies, to make sure that these people have something to lose, and then they are quiet, but not always. So there were several alarms went off in the past months. Apparently, the army top command warned Netanyahu that all these internal protests in Israel were weakening the army, and maybe that's why Hamas decided to attack, because it's like could see that Israel was weakened and divided. And then with relatively simple and cheap methods and means, they knew how to surprise the best army, that's debatable, in the Middle East. But nobody should be surprised. Like the Taliban managed to drive out the world's strongest army from Afghanistan, and then the war in Iraq. After a quick victory, it's ended in a slow defeat. And then there's also the lesson of Vietnam. So far, nothing new. So I'm gonna go to where he says that Hamas has already won. Now, he also mentioned that there were about 20 Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip, but Ariel Sharon, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, decided to do away with these settlements in 2005. And then there was a small Palestinian civil war, and Hamas got to control Gaza, but we know this. And then Fatah only remained in control of parts of the West Bank. And then there are opposing views as to why Israel blockaded Gaza. Is it because of Hamas, or is it because the policies of several Israeli governments wanted to sabotage a two-state solution? And since the presidency of Bill Clinton, there was no more serious attempt to get the peace process going again. I've heard that this is not correct, that Secretary of State John Kerry, that he did try, that he really tried to broker peace. And he writes that probably an important motivation is to let it be known that the Palestinians are not irrelevant, or make people feel that they are not irrelevant. And then he finally, that's what we wanted to know more about, why he says that Hamas has already won the war. So it with this attack, Hamas has proven that Israel is not untouchable, and probably the success um, of this attack is bigger than the leaders had expected. And the military doctrine of the Israeli army had always been to avoid large-scale wars and to only execute small operations, and preferably not initiated by the enemy. So the frozen conflict had to stay frozen, and this doctrine is now in smithereens. It's like completely destroyed, and the Israeli army is now acting out of weakness, um, because it really stayed weak. The scale of the mobilization and the ground offensives, offensive are symptoms of that weakness. And the goal now is to reimpose, to um, repair this image of being a threat, of being threatening, of being deterrent. So, and this deterrence in practice means that for every Israeli victim, there are 5, 10, 15 times more Palestinian victims, and it has to be like that. Otherwise, there is no deterrence. So you can do your own accounting. More infrastructure will be destroyed in Gaza, and after a long and bloody war, and probably including a ground offensive. So this was written only 1 week after October 7th, so it's a bit dated. So there will be attempts to rescue the hostages, and eventually Egypt, Turkey, Qatar will start some sort of peace negotiations to get to some kind of ceasefire or armistice. And there's not much more to be gained than to go back to October 6th. So Israel may claim that they are destroying Hamas, but for now there is no alternative for Hamas in Gaza, so it's very bleak. And so those who were responsible for killings, for the killings on this past Saturday, that they will be tracked down by the Israeli secret services, and they will be killed. And you can read the excellent book by the journalist Ronan Bergman, "Rise and Kill First," about that. Everything will be different if Hezbollah decides to join. In that case, parts of Tel Aviv, Haifa, Beirut, and probably also Damascus will be destroyed. So, and he mentions these skirmishes that are going uh, on the Lebanese-Israeli border. And then in that case, there will be a big regional war. Well, these are all things we know already. And he mentions this Gerald Ford carrier strike group, so 6 warships. They have arrived in the east of the Mediterranean. Yeah, and also in the end, the Palestinians or just a chess piece on a political chessboard for Iran. And he also writes that Iran has learned that from previous invasions that the only thing that can protect you is to have an atomic bomb, and that's basically also the lesson that you can learn from what happened in Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022. And already 1 day after the beginning of the war, of this catastrophe, Mark Heller said, he's a researcher who has published a lot about the Middle East, and this I don't have to translate. These things tend to get out of control, and there's little to be added to that. So it doesn't really explain why Hamas has already won this war. I think there's much more to say about that. It puts the Palestinians back on the map, um, uh, by enticing or provoking Israel, that they are now moving into Gaza. Their soldiers are becoming a target. If they wouldn't have launched a ground offensive, Hamas has no chance to take out Israeli tanks, and now they are doing that. I see many people admiring their courage and how they are able to take out these tanks in urban warfare. Tanks are actually not really designed to go into cities, especially not if they're covered in rubble, and you have very motivated fighters with anti-tank guns hiding in the rubble. So Israel got angry, attacked, and it can of course bomb, but no matter how much they bomb, just bombing is not going to solve this. They can't kill every Hamas fighter just by bombing, and they like to compare this and justify this by the Allies had to bomb Nazi Germany. But if you could have a talk with Albert Speer, the Minister of Armaments in Germany during the Second World War, he would have been the first to say that these bombardments were actually not that effective, and that their armaments production continued, and still kind of debatable to what extent the all these bombardments on Nazi Germany shortened the war. This is something that in the end can only be finished by ground troops. I think Hamas knows that. It can't fight Israel unless they invade. So they got what they wanted. And I was expecting him to say that this is what Hamas wanted. But maybe it was too early. It was published 1 week after the events, but I think the plan was clear. I think Hamas got what he wanted, and they don't give a shit that above ground children are being blown to pieces, and their mangled limbs have to be cut off without anesthesia. I find it hard to believe that Hamas cares about that. They do care about getting juicy targets, and they are getting those juicy targets now. And I mean, I think Israeli losses are pretty high, and probably already higher than the losses they incurred in 2006 in Lebanon, or in any other invasion of the Gaza Strip. So I think it seems like Hamas is quite happy about this. Like, there's a showdown. They can show the world that they can fight. It's clear that they are putting up some stiff resistance, and people are rooting for the underdog. So yeah, I think Hamas gained a lot. It was this or be forgotten by the world. That's it. Comment, please. Let me know what you think. Like if you like this, if you want to encourage me to do more of this, and subscribe. It really helps to grow the channel, and the bigger the channel gets, the better the content I can offer you. Also, the bigger the guests I can invite on, or the more famous, not bigger, the more famous the guest can become. So, thanks for listening, and have a good night.